As we continue to follow breaking news in the D.C. area on the deadly mid-air collision between a jet and military helicopter, we are hearing from devastated family members of the people who were on board that flight from Wichita.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
Can't even imagine.
Just heartbreaking as we bring in John Del Giorno. And John, when you hear and you think about these stories replicated some 60+ times with 64 people on board the plane, and then you had 3 military members on board that Black Hawk. Aviation-wise, John, when we think about what's playing out right now, and part of the investigation will be how did this happen, of course. On a Black Hawk helicopter, do they have the tracking devices, the black boxes that we know about, the flight data recorders that we so often hear about on board a plane? And then also, what about these mechanisms that are supposed to help avoid collisions in midair? What does a Black Hawk have?
Two really good questions there. So that's one of the things I would be looking at. The Black Hawk helicopters don't have the same kind of equipment that commercial aircraft have, so they might not have those kind of cockpit voice recorders. But you talk about this automatic equipment. You know, this industry really polices itself very aggressively, and when a problem is identified, it is attacked, and cost is really not an object. And one of the advances in recent technology has been this collision avoidance technology. Now, commercial aircraft, even NewsCopter 7, private aircraft, in the last few years, they've been equipped with transponders that not only transmit location, but also altitude. And that's transmitted to everybody. That's the kind of information you see on FlightAware, but that's also available from aircraft to aircraft. Now, commercial aircraft have what's called TCAS. That's Collision Avoidance System. And that actually alerts a pilot to a nearby aircraft. And that is meant to give a pilot direction at the last minute to avoid a possible collision. The key here is where this accident took place. First of all, it's not unusual at all for helicopters to be operating in that area. Right. Military and law enforcement, it's constant on the Potomac River. But this commercial airplane was so low that it might have been low enough that that collision avoidance system wouldn't alert the pilot because it doesn't want to give false alarms to planes that would be planes on the ground. So it does hit a certain altitude where that TCAS is no longer going to alert the pilot. I'm hearing that this may have happened between 300 and 400 feet. That is short final with very little chance to react.
And just tell us, it sounds like it's not the case, but I know, John, we've been talking about this for quite some time, the air traffic controller shortage, right? And how that has impacted so many close calls and frightening crashes. In this case, that is not a factor here?
It's too early to say.
Yeah.
Some of the tapes have been released that you hear that conversation back and forth. In NewsCopter 7, we regularly operate near the area airports. And the conversation, we will request a location. The controller will instruct us if there's any aircraft in the area, which is something that you heard on that tape. You hear him. Do you have visual contact of that airplane? Then the controller will approve it with the instructions that say maintain visual separation. At that point, it's up to the helicopter to avoid the other air traffic. The controller has done everything they can. Do you see the airplane? Now it's your job to avoid the airplane. As long as that pilot says, yes, I see it, yes, I'll avoid it, now it's the key here is that it's the helicopters. In our case, it would be our responsibility. You have to assume that commercial airplane is busy trying to land. And so now it's the helicopter's responsibility to see and avoid. That's the key term, see and avoid.